Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host. And today I'm going to talk to you about Vivek Ramaswamy. He is one of the exciting new political finds who is running to try and win the Republican nomination for the president. If he does, he would be the first Indian American to become the president of the United States of America. Before I talk more about him, please do the needful, subscribe to Khanversations, like the video, press the bell icon, and make sure to share this video with others. For those of you who find the content interesting and would like to support it, you also have the option to join Khanversations. So where you see the button to subscribe, right next to it is the button to join. And so I welcome you to join Khanversations. So the first few comments about Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm going to try and focus on the speech that he gave at the Nixon Library, which he designated, which was at least advertised as his foreign policy speech, which was going to lay out his vision for a new American foreign policy under his administration. So the first few things I want to say is that the man is incredibly sharp. He's brilliant, no doubt about it. He's very, very smart. He's young. He's 38. He's very dynamic, extremely energetic. There's a lot of energy about him, a lot of enthusiasm. He's quite exciting as a candidate, and he has lots and lots of ideas. A bit like Yang, who ran in the 2016, or rather the 2020 cycle. And he's also a billionaire. He's become very rich, went to Harvard and Yale, did his bachelor's in botany from Harvard, and went to Yale Law School. And he's done well in the business. He's worth over $1 billion by some estimates. Some estimates are that he's about $600 million. Nevertheless, he's very, very rich. He's able to support his own campaign, and is not worried about fundraising. So he's kind of like Trump. My assessment is that he is a much nicer and a much smarter version of Donald Trump, but his foreign policy or his domestic politics do not significantly vary from Trump. He positions himself as an America First conservative, and in the past few years, the person who has made America First, his ideology and his policy is Donald Trump. So basically, he is also claiming that he is a Donald Trump Republican when he says he's America First Republican. He feels that America at the moment, the US is experiencing an identity crisis. The US is like an adolescent. And in this identity crisis, we have forgotten what it means to be an American. And therefore, he is going to tell us what it means to be an American. So I have not only listened to his speech, but I did look at some of his discussions, especially with Bill Maher, a 1 hour long conversation where he spoke about lots of things. So the first thing that I want to touch upon is that listen to him talk about the values that he thinks America was founded on.
What does it mean to be American? To me, it means we believe in the ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. Ideals like meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence. The idea that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why I've said I will end affirmative action.
Vivek Ramaswamy thinks that America was founded on meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence. I think he needs to read his history. I'm sure he went to Harvard, but studied sciences, must have had great high school education. But I would love to remind him that America was certainly not based on meritocracy or the pursuit of excellence. When America was founded as a republic, only white men who owned land could vote. It was not about meritocracy. It was about aristocracy. The second thing is it was not about pursuit of excellence. It was about pursuit of happiness. If you want to make pursuit of excellence your goal, you have to really work very hard. But if your goal is pursuit of happiness, then you make other people work hard for you and you chill. And that's what slavery comes in. Apparently, Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy has never heard of slavery, doesn't talk about slavery, or as one of the founding ideas in this country. Some people argue that that was very critical. He talks about people being treated equally. Yes, in the post-1965 America, after the civil rights movement became such a success that people started becoming and being treated equally. His parents were able to come and migrate to the US from India after what happened in 1965. The civil rights movement enabled the America's immigration policies to be non-racist. It became open to people, brown people like his parents and me. So I think he has this very strange vision of what America was 250 years ago, which probably will not stand up to any scrutiny. Yes, meritocracy is a great idea. His whole life is a reflection of meritocracy. He talks about achieving his American dream because America values meritocracy. If we had lost that, then how could he have been so successful? So I think his whole idea that America was based on meritocracy in pursuit of excellence 250 years ago is wrong. These changes are things that America has progressed towards, and we are still struggling to move towards that. And he uses this as a justification to essentially try and end affirmative action, and those ideas are going to come back and bite him if he were to win the Republican nomination. If he becomes the Republican nominee, either because Trump is arrested and sent to jail or because somehow he overtakes Donald Trump, then these ideas will begin where he ignores the pervading influence of racism in this country. Will come back to definitely haunt him. Trump wins the nomination, then Nikki Haley could be his vice presidential choice. Vivek Ramaswamy has said very clearly that he doesn't know how to be number two, so he's not going to accept if Trump offers him the vice presidential ticket. So in that sense, either it's all or nothing for Vivek Ramaswamy. The second thing that he does and suggests in this speech at the Nixon Library, I think the choice of the Nixon Library itself was quite surprising and wrong. Why is he trying to associate himself with Nixon, who was the first Trump, the Republican president who abused power? The Watergate scandal, for those of you who remember the illegal activities that he committed. So, and then comes Donald Trump, and it's January 6th. And so I don't understand why Vivek Ramaswamy thinks he can associate himself with Nixon. And there are many Republicans who would not like that, I am sure. But nevertheless, his next big idea is to shut down many of America's bureaucracies. He thinks that this bureaucracy has become a deep state and is the fourth branch of the government and is not under control of the executive. In fact, it controls the executive. And so he's going to basically shut down, and he mentions shutting down FBI and the Department of Education, for example.
From the FBI to the IRS to the ATF to the CDC to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to the U.S. Department of Education. We will not just reform them, we will get in there and shut it down. That is how we revive the integrity of a constitutional republic.
And then elsewhere he says that he will reduce them by 90%. That sounds really very silly. There's so much of crime in America that the FBI addresses. Just shutting FBI down doesn't mean that the crimes are going to disappear. So who is going to fight those crimes? Either he'll have to create a new agency or basically empower other institutions. It would have made more sense that he would create circumstances in the country where people don't have to turn to the crimes that require us to have such a huge FBI with 20,000 agents. Now, that would be an idea I would like to listen to him. Let me give you an example of what Donald Trump did. He cut down the size of the State Department by 30%. And now it's such a huge headache. People are having trouble getting their visas, their passports. Americans are up in arms this week. This summer, they had to travel and they were getting delays because the State Department is so understaffed, thanks to Mr. Donald Trump. We went without important ambassadors for several months, sometimes even a couple of years under Donald Trump. Many functions of the State Department were not being functioned. People's green cards have been held back by months and months because other bureaucracies have been cut. So his idea that he can cut bureaucracies and get things done is a pipe dream. I don't know who is going to believe that. And for those of you in India, imagine if someone suddenly gets elected and reduces the size of IAS, IFS, and IPS by 90%. Do you think the country will be better off? He's going to anchor his foreign policy on Nixonian realism. So he seems to be a big fan of Nixon, and that's why he came to the Nixon library and laid out. So he says that his foreign policy, as you can hear.
So I'm going to use tonight as an opportunity to lay out my foreign policy vision for where we're going in the next generation of our engagement on the global stage, and it will revive that spirit of Nixonian realism. It is why it was important for me to be here in person today, to make this announcement here in the Nixon Library, where much of that wisdom resides. We live in a moment right now where actually, they say the worst ideas in Washington are bipartisan. Our engagement in the Ukraine war continues to prove that, if you ask me. But the way we're going to actually do this is by transitioning from an era of neoconservatism and liberal hegemony to an era of realism and unapologetic American nationalism, where we stand for our national interests on the global stage. The North Star of my foreign policy will be the modern Monroe Doctrine, combined with Nixon's doctrine. The Nixon doctrine was that other nations have to be the first protectors of their own national security. I agree with that. We will revive that, and I combine that with the modern Monroe Doctrine, a doctrine that we will re-implement under my watch as U.S. President, which says that if you're a foreign nation, you do not mess with the United States of America on our own home soil. You do not test us on our waters or in the Western Hemisphere.
He says that his foreign policy is based on two doctrines, Monroe Doctrine and the Nixon Doctrine. And he calls this as Nixonian realism. Monroe, I'm not very sure, was a realist. He was an imperialist. And his whole idea of the Monroe Doctrine, if it was in order to promote democracy in the Western Hemisphere and cordon it off from the exploitative nature of European nations who were colonizing countries in those days, then it was what he dislikes, which is liberal imperialism. And so this idea that he will employ the Monroe Doctrine as well as the Nixon Doctrine does not make sense. It appears what he's saying is that I will protect U.S. interests, the U.S. territory, as well as the entire Latin America and South America. That is his modern Monroe Doctrine, because this is America's backyard. But by Nixon Doctrine, he implies that he's not going to go out there and defend other countries like Ukraine or Taiwan. These countries will have to first defend themselves, and he's not going to be there. So basically what he's saying is that based on the Monroe Doctrine that he will adopt, he will protect Argentina if Argentina is attacked by China. But because of the new or his conception of Nixonian doctrine that he plans to adopt, if China were to attack India, he would not help India because the Nixon doctrine says India should help itself. So I think he's pretty confused on the foreign policy issue, and he needs to consult some serious scholars of American foreign policy. And you will notice as to how he's also committing errors on certain issues, which is going to alienate him from the potential base of Republican voters. His fourth point about India, listen to him, what he says about India.
A renewed commitment to our partnership that we may expand with India. hard commitments to close the Andaman Sea and block the Malacca Strait if required, in the position of potential conflict arising around Taiwan. India would happily do that if we gave them a trade deal that looked similar to what we have already with Chile or Australia. And I'm not just saying that because my name is Vivek freaking Ramaswamy here, okay? In fact, part of the reason that we have a relationship of mistrust, I would say a relationship of trust with India that could leave room for improvement, is that we haven't had the kind of trust-based dialogue between our two countries. And so, you know, if I'm not going to get that done by the end of my first term, I would consider that a personal failure on an ethnic count. But this is how we think about deterrence of China. Bolster our relationship.
His position is very glib. He is looking at India through the lenses of China. First thing that comes to his mind is the battle for Taiwan, where he hopes that India will cordon off the Andaman Sea and block the Malacca Strait in order to protect Taiwan when it is attacked by China. And he thinks he's going to get this done, get India to fight for Taiwan. Indians, by that time, will be throwing the Nixon doctrine at him and says, well, you believe in the Nixon doctrine, so let Taiwan defend itself. Why should India go to its defense? But what is also funny is that the incentive that he offers to India is a free trade agreement like that of Australia and Chile. I'm not very sure that India is interested in that kind of a free trade agreement. Right now, India is busy following a path which requires India to impose taxes in the same week, I think, in which he was talking about offering India a free trade agreement. Donald Trump was threatening to impose tariffs on India while referring to the Harley-Davidson taxes that India has imposed. I think it costs, you have to pay about 200% customs in order to get a Harley-Davidson motorbike. Not only that, India is now banning imports of laptops and tablets, etc., and demanding that importers have special licenses in order to make at home. This is the old import substitution strategy of developing nations in the 60s and 70s, where they imposed taxes or banned imports in order to encourage domestic production. So for a country at the moment that India is trying to become, I'm not very sure a free trade agreement will be so exciting to India right now, because free trade agreement will be, then we will have to import Apple laptops without any tariffs or any restrictions in India. So I think he has not thought through what his position is going to be towards India. He also, in that little 1-minute clip, you can see he first said that India and US distrust each other. Then he tried to correct himself and say that I will improve the trust between the two countries. So I think he's not paying much attention to India and what's been going on between the US and India. I don't think he's up to date with US-India relations. So these are some of his broad strokes. But the biggest and the most interesting point is that he's opposed to US involvement in the Ukrainian war. And he goes through this elaborate plan on how, if he were to become president, he would end the Ukrainian war. And basically, he means giving land to Russia. So he makes this argument that Nixon was great because Nixon understood that the threat to the United States was not from communist China, but from the Soviet Union. And so Nixon in 1972 went to China in order to ensure that China and the Soviet Union did not come together and make an alliance against the US. So Nixon's major achievement was to sever a China-Soviet Union alliance that made America stronger and China more or less neutral in that conflict. So he thinks he can be the new Nixon, where he will cut the ties that are emerging between China and Russia. He thinks that the biggest threat to America from a security point of view is this alliance between Russia with hypersonic missiles and nuclear capabilities and China with its great and growing economy. So this partnership between China and Russia is in his view the biggest threat to the United States, which is quite a conventional view. Most people think so. Even I think so too on that. But he feels that if he were to offer or sacrifice Ukraine to Russia and say, okay, you can keep these lands that you have already conquered, and we will even remove the sanctions and facilitate financial or economic relations with the West if you sever your ties with China. And he thinks this is something great that will fly. I don't think the American public is going to buy that. Yes, there is a fatigue as far as the support for Ukraine is concerned, and there are lots of people who will say that America should not be spending so much money in trying to defend Ukraine indefinitely, and then later on commit to rebuilding Ukraine, which could go into $500 billion. So yes, there might be some. He might get some support there. Republicans have always, at least in the past few months, shown an unwillingness to give Zelensky a blank check. So that's one thing. And it was interesting that in the Nixon library, he did not talk about the Middle East at all. Middle East is a very important region for the U.S. foreign policy, especially U.S. relations with Israel. And elsewhere, Ramaswamy said he was willing to cut aid to Israel. And while he said that he will support and continue what Obama promised, the $38 billion till 2028. So roughly about $4 billion a year will be sent to Israel until 2028. But after that, he will discontinue, which means in his second term, he will offer no aid to Israel because Obama's promise covers the first term of the next president. Also. So in that sense, I think while Vivek Ramaswamy is exciting, intelligent, young, he could be running for president 20 years from now. He could be running for president of the United States 40 years from now. He would be as young or as old as Donald Trump 40 years from now. Both Biden and Trump are more than double his age. But I think some of his ideas are problematic and will not fly and will actually undermine him because the Republican Party is about law and order. They believe in expanding the police force, not cutting law enforcement. And so his argument about cutting IRS, they might like because they don't want to pay taxes, but cutting FBI, I don't think they are going to like that. And he's going to be quizzed on that more and more. The more important person he becomes in the race, he's now second. He's caught up with Ron DeSantis. And when Donald Trump is not in the pool, so when you take the GOP poll with Donald Trump in the pool, then he's tied with Ron DeSantis in the second place. But if you do it without Donald Trump in the pool, then Ramaswamy is more popular than Ron DeSantis. But we'll see how it goes in the debate. One thing that hasn't been said is that there are a lot of people in this country who are quite racist and xenophobic. And unfortunately for Ramaswamy, a majority of them happen to be in the Republican Party. So the fact that he's a Hindu, the fact that he's brown, the fact that he's a first-generation immigrant, let us see to what extent that impacts his appeal with hardcore Republican voters. As you can see on Twitter, there are already some preachers who are targeting his religious beliefs, and he's already become a target of hate speech from Republican leaning pastors, etc., who are talking about his religion.
We are in danger as a country. And listen to me, Generation Z. Listen to me, millennials. Those of you that are watching, that you like this new young guy. If he does not serve the Lord Jesus Christ and stand primarily for Judeo-Christian principles, you will have a fight with God. What are we doing? Even entertaining the fact you're going to have some dude put his hand on something other than the Bible? You're going to let him put all of his strange gods up in the White House and we're just supposed to blink because he understands policies?
We'll see what happens. Will he take a cabinet position if Donald Trump wins? God forbid. But we'll see what happens. He does have interesting ideas. And so all the best to Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. I have finally got the names, thanks to one of the viewers of Khanversations, I have got the contact address for his team, and so I will be trying to reach out to him. And Vivek Ramaswamy, you're welcome on Conversations whenever you like. I would love to debate with you. You and I have one thing in common. We are both fans of Thomas Jefferson. So all the best to you. Take care. And those of you who are watching, please subscribe to Conversations, ring the bell icon, like the video, and make sure to share it with your friends and your social network. This is Muqtedar Khan. Until next time, take care.